Welcome to the Fireside CharLA series, brought to you in partnership with United Latinx Fund and Latino Coalition of Los Angeles. I'm Richard Corral, Interim Executive Director of the United Latinx Fund. This online series aims to engage, educate, and advocate on important and timely topics that impact LA's Latinx community during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to quickly thank the sponsors of tonight's event, Southern California Gas Company and JP Morgan Chase, for their commitment to and investment in nonprofits like the United Latinx Fund that transform, uplift, and improve our community's quality of life. Our program is designed to engage you, our audience, so if you have any questions, please do enter them into the chat box. And note that everybody's audio and video will be muted until the question and answer session of tonight's program. Also, tonight's program is streaming on Facebook Live, and to access that video, please visit ULF's Facebook page, and a link is already provided in the chat box. Tonight's conversation centers on the American Red Cross Los Angeles region and their crisis response team, leading the work in the midst of a pandemic and on the front lines of feeding tens of thousands of students and families, while at the same time responding to natural disasters, home fires, and let's not forget the civil unrest on top of all of that. The American Red Cross LA region has really stepped up its operations on numerous fronts, as you can imagine, to execute a series of very innovative rapid responses. And they're here to give us some insight on how that happens, where it happens, and how we can get involved and how we can support, as well as some of the nuances in terms of what they can and cannot do, particularly with regards to civil unrest. So tonight's featured guests are Raul Claros, the Executive Director of the Northern Valley Chapter, and David Englin, Chief Operating Officer of the American Red Cross Los Angeles. So let's get into it. David, Raul, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Absolutely. And could you please update us on your organization's rapid response to COVID-19, as well as some of the unique parameters that govern how your organization can and cannot respond to the current civil unrest?
Sure. I think if it's all right with you, David, I'll kind of kick us off and then pass the ball over to you. Richard, we quickly found ourselves finding here in LA how to get involved when COVID happened. And one of the first calls that we got was from our partners over at LAUSD, letting us know about the free grab and go meals that they were getting ready to roll out. And so the need there was really for volunteers. And something that we really pride ourselves on as an organization is that we're a volunteer-based humanitarian organization. 90% of our force is volunteers. And so we've seen that natural fit. To this day, we now have over 21 million free meals that have been served in partnership with LAUSD. And so that's where we found ourselves immediately serving the community. We then also found ourselves in a familiar situation with a blood shortage, but that usually doesn't happen until about the summertime. And so this year, because of what happened with COVID, folks were not sure about the stay-at-home orders, what was it potential or not. And so we quickly pulled out a call to action to the American people, asking them to please continue to donate blood. And we're very thankful to a lot of our government partners. In my territory, which is the Northern Valley's chapter, we're over in the San Fernando Valley with a lot of our government partners, and Council Member Monica Rodriguez has been a champion, hosting 2 blood drives just this last month. Secretary of State Alex Padilla came down himself to donate blood. And so that's the type of partnership that we've been working out in the San Fernando Valley. And also, we found a way on how to really ask that community through our Prepare LA resiliency and preparedness coalitions on what was the need out in the San Fernando Valley outside of what we were doing for the community. And what they really needed was more bodies, more volunteers. There was a lot of programs to feed some of the sick and shut-ins, some of the seniors, but there weren't enough volunteers. And so we quickly responded to the call by Congressmember Tony Cardenas, the Silmar Resiliency Coalition that we've helped build there, the Pacoima Preparedness Coalition, the Van Nuys Preparedness Coalition, and the City of San Fernando Resiliency Coalition. All these coalitions that are already in the San Fernando Valley through our work activated us because we can't self-deploy. And so we were very fortunate to really localize our efforts here in LA, and also the COOP trainings that David will talk about in a moment. David?
Sure, thank you, Raul. And I hate to correct a colleague in front of folks, but I just want to correct one number that Raul threw out. He said that we have delivered 21 million meals through the LAUSD program. It actually yesterday crossed 31 million. And the amazing thing about that is, we basically had to invent a new way of delivering our humanitarian services within a couple of days. Because of our strong partnerships and relationships, we had a partnership with LAUSD and a partnership with the LA County Department of Public Health. So we had a heads up that this was coming, and in a very short amount of time, we had to reinvent how we deliver our services. And through that, at this point, since that kicked off March 18th, we've now served more than 31 million meals. And the amazing thing about that is when you look at the history of Red Cross food delivery and feeding programs throughout the country, this is now the second largest food providing program in Red Cross history. The only program that was larger was the services we provided during Hurricane Katrina. And just to add to how really truly amazing that is, Hurricane Katrina was a national operation. So when the Red Cross mobilizes for a national operation, you have Red Crossers from all over the country kind of swarming in to work that disaster response and provide that service. Well, this is a local operation. So those 31 million and growing meals have been delivered by the Los Angeles Red Cross without help from other Red Crosses around the country. So, I mean, it's hard to overstate the magnitude of that effort and the impact that's having on our community. When you think about the size of LAUSD, I mean, it's almost 250,000 students. Almost 500,000 of those students are on free and reduced lunches. So when schools close and they're at home, without that program that we're delivering, those students would go hungry. The other piece I just wanted to add to that is we also created a partnership with World Central Kitchen, because the challenge with the LAUSD program is the food is actually provided through the federal free and reduced lunch program. So technically only the students are supposed to get the food, but we know because of COVID-19, so many parents are out of work and they need to eat too. So with World Central Kitchen, the food they provide can go to anyone. So we were actually able to set it up so that when the parents come and walk up to get food with their kids, the child can get the LAUSD food, the parent can get the World Central Kitchen food. So then we're meeting that important food insecurity need for the entire community. So it really is something that we're very proud of. So shifting gears to some of the other things that we've done, Raul did a great job highlighting some of the very local efforts throughout the LA region, the LA area. But one of the things we identified early on is that there are many nonprofits throughout LA who, because of the nature of the important services they provide, are able, in terms of the public health guidelines, they're considered essential organizations, essential businesses, and they're able to continue operating. But the question that many of them had was, how do we continue providing our services in a way that is safe for our staff and for our clients during this time? So we tapped into our expertise in what we call continuity of operations, which is basically a long way of saying, of kind of asking the question, how do we keep our business, our organization running during an emergency, during a crisis? So we tailored a continuity of operations workshop, very specifically tactically focused on COVID-19 and those challenges, aligned it with the guidance from the CDC and the LA County Department of Public Health, and figured out how to offer it virtually. I have to give a big shout out to the United Latinx Fund, because you all were promoting those workshops like crazy and really helped us get lots of organizations to the table to participate. And what that did was provide a vital service in terms of training and information to allow those nonprofits to continue providing the various important services they provide throughout this crisis. So earlier this week, we actually wound down that program, and we did that because we've gotten to a point where people have figured out how to keep operating, and now they're more focused on the transition back as things start to reopen. So we've wound that down. We're kind of taking a step back with that and looking at how to kind of reinvent that, or how to connect people with other resources in the community, because there are actually a lot of groups now providing resources and information on how to reopen safely. And our goal is to be a value add, not to duplicate the work of others. So we're looking at that. And then of course, we've added on to the COVID-19 crisis, the additional layer of the protests and the civil unrest and that element, which I'm happy to chat about a little bit more. But before we get to that, I also want to mention, and Richard, I know you're going to promote the link to these resources, but on our local LA Red Cross website, we actually have a landing page focused on COVID-19. And on that page, there are a number of resources, including resources around family wellness, COVID-19 safety. These are just a few of the kinds of trainings and information and ways to engage that we're providing to help people through this crisis. And then the one other thing I wanted to mention, again, on the topic of nonprofits, along the way, we figured out that a lot of the nonprofits, especially the smaller nonprofits out there in the community, are doing amazing work, but they have capacity issues. The demand for their services has really increased. And so they come to us asking for volunteers to help support their efforts. Now, you know, as amazing as our Red Cross volunteers are, you know, we do have a finite capacity. And so we were focused on the various feeding programs. So what we did instead was we created a workshop to help train and educate nonprofits on how to recruit and manage volunteers in the most effective way. So in that way, the service we're providing them is actually increasing their capacity. You know, it's the old adage about teaching a person to fish instead of just giving them a fish. So instead of just giving them volunteers, which in some cases we've done, we're teaching them how to recruit and manage volunteers. And the beauty of that is that's not only going to increase their capacity during this crisis, but that's going to increase their capacity over the long term, so that, you know, 2, 3, 4 years from now, these smaller nonprofits that are so important in our community are going to be even stronger and have an even better ability to perform their missions. We're very excited about that. And you can actually go to that link that Richard's going to share, and there's a section there where you can sign up for those workshops as well.
Thank you, David, for that. And thank you, Raul, for sort of giving us the macro, and then also some of the work on more of the regional level, as well as sort of giving us a flavor, right, of the different ways in which American Red Cross has responded in, for lack of a better word, historic ways, really, in setting new standards of excellence and new goal setting that, as you were saying earlier, David, has really only been matched, you know, at the national level. So,
and if Richard, if I can add, the way that we've been able to be successful here in LA is based off of partnerships and relationships. We're fortunate enough to have foreseen the situation here locally after Katrina. We noticed back then that folks were meeting for the first time during the crisis. And so we quickly did here with the support of partners like California Edison was develop a program called Prepare SoCal and Prepare LA. And what we were able to do was build resiliency coalitions and preparedness coalitions in very Latinx dominant communities and communities of color, vulnerable communities, due to the liquefaction, the soil that they sit on, the geographical locations where they're at, like in the San Fernando Valley, which is earthquake country, wildfire country. And it's really been because of those partnerships that we've been successful, because we still are responding to home fires. We're still on standby for earthquakes and wildfires locally and across the nation.
When I'm listening to you to speak, and I really appreciate the sort of the dynamic quality of the work. It's both horizontal and vertical at the same time, which is not easy to do, honestly. And it makes me sort of think about one of the core elements of your business model, which are the volunteers. And David shared a little bit about how you're leveraging now in a different way your expertise around volunteerism and sharing that expertise to the benefit of other nonprofit organizations. So to that end, what is your current call to action? What is your current need, almost if you were to make an ask? And the reason why I'm framing it that way is because on this call, you have the networks of the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles and United Latinx Fund. One is a 501c3 organization, a philanthropy. The other one is a 501c4, more like a political action committee. And so you have a diverse group of folks here with relationships. So can you, if you were to make an ask, or if you have a need, what is it? And share a little bit about that.
I'm gonna let David go first. He's speaking on behalf of the region, so.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so our largest ask is really still for those volunteers to staff the LAUSD food distribution sites. That program is going to continue for about another 3 weeks to the end of the month. And I'll share with you, I mean, it's a challenge. You know, the fact that we've been able to so far distribute over 31 million meals, I mean, that's really because of those volunteers. We have to fill roughly 150 volunteer slots every single day, and that's a heavy lift. So if you go to that website link that Richard put in the chat, there's actually a place there where you can sign up and volunteer, and it's really easy. I mean, you can pick which school you want to work at, and it'll show you the shift and all of that. So it's very easy. But that is our primary volunteer need right now, is still for that food distribution. But I'll tell you, I would be remiss if I didn't just make sure everyone knows that 90+% of the work of the Red Cross all the time, not just during a historic situation like this, but 90% of our work all the time is performed by volunteers. And so when in your neighborhood, if a house burns down and you're standing there watching your home burn, a Red Cross team will show up to take care of you, to take care of your kids, make sure that you're okay, and help get you back on your feet. That kind of thing happens all year long, COVID or not. We're going into wildfire season. Historically, during this time of year, we have families and whole communities who have to evacuate and are displaced by wildfires. We need volunteers to get trained in advance to be able to staff shelters and to be able to do all those disaster responses. So if you're interested in getting involved in any of this work, not just for the immediate need of the LAUSD food distribution, but long-term and becoming part of our Red Cross team, just go to that website and sign up. We definitely need you.
Thank you.
And I would say, Richard, mine is more personal to everyone that's on here, is to really ask yourself, are you ready? You know, are you ready? Is your family ready? And what does that mean? Are you prepared in the car? Are you prepared at home? Are you prepared at work? Well, prepared for what? For an earthquake, for a fire, and for an active shooter situation. You know, we're going through some real tough times. And so staying ready is really the message that I want to push, because it's like, when you get on the plane, they tell you put on your mask first before you try to help anyone else out. And so you as leaders for the community start off as leaders from your home. And the best way that you can, the best promotion is word of mouth, but it's also modeling. And so anytime that you do have your kit, that you do have your plan, and that you feel ready, then we want you to pass that information along. And I encourage everyone to visit the website and also look at the Spanish speaking preparedness programs. If nonprofits here can really start promoting some of our Spanish speaking, online programs and trainings, that I'll tell you something about COVID. It has allowed us as an organization to really look at our best practices from working remotely to really how much of a use is brick and mortar still. And so we're sharing that information with organizations. But the other thing is that more people are attending regular meetings now that we're hosting and facilitating than ever before, because they don't have to worry about the 405 and the 10 and the 110 and all those great highways that we've spent a lot of hours of our lives in. And so that's no longer a barrier. And so let's take advantage of a lot of the positive things that we've learned. And also, I think I see David's smoke alarm behind him. And so it's a reminder, check your home smoke alarms, right? And make sure that those couple minutes that you need could actually save your life.
Yeah, I put that smoke alarm in the shot on purpose.
Right.
Oh, you did. I got the sign.
I've been scolded a few times by my Red Cross friends when they come over. So yes, it is important, and I hear that. I do also want to remind everybody that we do have a chat box for your questions. I've been monitoring the chat box along with Cindy, who's a Latino Coalition of LA board member, and I do want to open it up to questions. And then I also want to remind folks that we do have Spanish translation that is available. And so please select the Spanish in the drop-down menu below. Tenemos traducción en español disponible para este programa. Seleccione español en el menú abajo. Gracias. Cindy, can we unmute Cindy and have her share some questions with us?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. And thank you, Raul and David, for all the information. We do have a question from Sandy. Sandy, I'll give you a couple of minutes to answer afterwards if you want to kind of comment back. But I see that her question is, will food distribution continue if there will be a second wave of COVID? Raul or David, who would like to answer that?
I'll defer to the boss.
Yeah, why don't I take that one? Boy, so it's a tough question. We all expect there to be a second wave, and really the LAUSD program is connected to LAUSD's decision to close schools because, of course, so many students were receiving their meals through schools. So, it is hard to predict. I would say that if schools reopen in the fall and then close again due to COVID, I would not be surprised if some form of this program resumes. But I can't speak on behalf of LAUSD, and they're our partner in this. What I can tell you is that we will continue to work with partners throughout the community to try and make sure that people's needs are met, whether that's providing volunteers or setting up food distribution programs ourselves. We work very closely with our partners to meet those needs. And I'll share a really good example of this. And we haven't really talked much about the civil unrest yet, but because of COVID, the governor actually mobilized the California National Guard to staff food banks, because so many people dealing with food insecurity were getting their food from food banks. And the LA Regional Food Bank had a major presence of California National Guard members who were assembling those food packages so that when people would come to the food bank, there'd be food to distribute. Well, because of the civil unrest, as you've seen on TV over the last couple of weeks, those National Guard members were redeployed, basically taken off of the food banks to provide a presence in the community for security and their piece of the response to civil unrest. Well, that left a gap. And so the state emergency management officials reached out to us at the Red Cross because they were trying to figure out how to continue to staff the food banks, recognizing that that food insecurity issue not only wasn't going away, but all of a sudden, because of the civil unrest, you had perhaps even more people now who would be struggling to make ends meet and to put food on the table. So in very short order, we pivoted and redirected a bunch of our staff and volunteers to fill that gap, so that we're now working shifts at the food bank to assemble those food packages and fill that gap left when the National Guard had to redeploy. And that's just one example of how we at the Red Cross as an organization really work closely with all of our partners and try to be very nimble and agile to try and meet those important community needs.
So we are in an effort to ensure that we're respectful of everyone's time, but also Alejandra, our translator, interpreter, we are going to wrap up our program for tonight, but I really want to thank Raul and David for this rich conversation and action-oriented discussion. In an effort to ensure support for nonprofits throughout Los Angeles County, much like American Red Cross, ULF and LCLA have launched the Campaign for Nonprofit Resilience. And the purpose of the campaign is to ensure that local grassroots nonprofits who primarily serve communities of color can withstand the current crises. And in fact, I'm excited to report that we now have over 1,000 signatures from community leaders. And we always encourage everyone to sign up and spread the word, because we'd like to be able to double that by the end of the month. And Cindy will be providing a link to the campaign for nonprofit resilience, and you can again share that with your networks. Lastly, before we initiate our mixer and begin the music, we have a special presentation actually tonight from Raul during the mixer, so you don't want to miss that. We're very excited to announce next week's featured guest is Councilman Curran Price for LA City Council, who happens to not only be the only Black representative on the committee, but he's also spearheading re-budgeting and budget cuts of the LA City budget, particularly around efforts to defund LAPD. And so for those who are following this national story that's really taking a focus here in LA, you do not want to miss next week's conversation, and it is going to be lively. Thanks again for everybody for tuning in. As always, let us go ahead and transition. One note before we do that, when we transition to the mixer, you may note that your screen will have to reload. Don't worry, it's not going to turn off. It's just your screen may, there'll be an icon that will show your screen is reloading, and then it'll pop back up so we can activate everybody's audio and video. So be right back. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Richard.
Yep.
Richard.
Yep. Looking forward to seeing everybody's faces.
Hey man, you cue it up like if I'm gonna sing and dance, man. I'm gonna I'm gonna disappoint some people. That's gonna happen.
I know, right? And now Raul's gonna perform.
Right. Oh,
Wait, he's not? That's why I'm here.
It's the Raul Hour of Power.
Right.
So
let me know when we're back on.
it just takes a second because they have to actually do one by one.
Okay.
So we have about 30, well, we had about 30 plus folks
Right.
joining us. So it takes a hot minute. for everybody to enter the party room,
There it is.
enter the club, scan your ID.
No, scan your ID. It took
Hey,
people.
guys.
We just want to have the
I'm
VIP
just
pass.
happy when they still ask me for an ID. I get happy. Like, I'm like, great, thank you. Yes, here it is.
The DJ gave me a VIP pass.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think that you guys could all hear me, right? I can see some of you, but breaking news, I'm not going to dance or sing. But what I am going to ask is if Cindy can share a link to our upcoming fundraiser and a flyer. And so next week, Wednesday, we're going to be hosting the Red Cross Northern Valleys chapter and the LA region happy hour for anyone that donates to this GoFundMe page. I think we're already in the last 24 hours or so that we really launched this. It's going for pretty much a week. We started doing some in-house work with it on the 27th, but it's really been full-fledged for the last week, and we're already close to $1,000 in just in a day or two. And so we're asking folks to donate, whether it's something small like $10, if you possibly could. $50 is a nice round number. This is a challenge to my board. We're trying to see if each one of us can bring in $1,000. And so I'm going to claim all of you if you get to donate, but I have to take the challenge along with my board. And so we're all trying to get $1,000 in from our networks. And if we're successful, we'll be able to raise $10,000 in that 7-day period. And the reason that that's important is because as priorities are being shifted and budgets are being cut, the reality is that we're still on standby for a lot of those natural and man-made potential disasters, some that are predictable, some that are not. We can understand that just looking at the last couple of summers, we've had earthquakes, we've had wildfires, but on a nightly basis, we're still having at least 2 home fires across the county. And so the only way that we can do it is the way that we've always done it. And that's by asking the American people to donate. So usually during a disaster, we ask for $10. During blue skies, we'll probably ask a little bit more at a typical fundraiser, but COVID has shut down that typical setting, right? And so this is our last push before the summer season, because once that summer season comes, it's go time, right? So if you guys could support, again, look at the chat box and get the information. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So thank you, Richard.